Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that talks with tomorrow's hoop stars. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Josh Tischler, Joey Bardak, and Drew Barton, and we're going to talk about the Final Four and the championship coming up and review what's gone down so far and talk about all the latest news, which is a ton of it. But before we do any of that, I'm going to ask our fine crew how they're doing. How you guys doing?
Can't complain, Rich.
What? You can't complain? If you can't complain, nobody could complain because you're like.
Yeah, well, I'm working on getting a new job here, so I'm in the middle of that process. I'm doing some interview stuff with the Seattle Storm, which has been kind of cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they need a communications coordinator who basically handles all the basketball stuff.
Right.
So like handling all the media during practices, games. And so I've been going through that process, which has been pretty cool.
Ah, all right. So I know you were looking at my alma mater a little bit, but
it
sounds like the Storm is, I think that would be a little bit of an upgrade.
Yeah, hard to say no to professional basketball. So
Right. Wow, cool. How about you guys, Joey, Josh?
I'm doing good. Freshman year winding down. Only got a few weeks left. Just relaxing before finals, I guess.
And Josh?
Been pretty good. Got like 1 month till graduation, which is crazy, and finishing some things up. Got my cap and gown last week, which is pretty exciting stuff. But I'm not just excited for the next chapter soon. So we'll see.
Right. And I believe, I don't know this for a fact. I'm just looking over. Were you the only person? No, you weren't the only person. But you were one of just a couple, maybe a few at most, to have a perfect Final Four in our bracket.
What do you know? There we go.
So I figure my mother's still leading with the card we picked. And then my wife is second, and she basically picked her own card. I mean, of course, she asked me, like, does Mount St. Mary's have a chance? And I'd like, no, things like that. But and then we have Josh in third and me in fourth. And I'm lucky to be in fourth because I get in two pools every year, the one we host and then another one with old friends from old days. And I changed. Remember, I said I had changed from Tennessee to Houston, and I did it with my friends. But
Right.
Well, not that you guys aren't friends, but in our pool, I somehow forgot to do it. So I did do the UCLA thing, or not the UCLA, North Carolina thing, carrying them out. But yeah, so I luckily didn't change it in our pool and sitting in fourth. But the way I see it, I think anybody in the top 10 can win some money. And I think anyone all the way down to seventh, which would be Drew, can actually win it all. Yeah, because Drew has Houston winning it all, and he's the only one. My friend Scott has Auburn winning it all. Then the rest of us have Florida, except for my wife, who has Duke. So that Houston-Duke game is going to be really crucial for our pool. All right, so let's move on to our college notebook. And I guess on that vein, the Elite Eight, Sweet 16, what are your guys' thoughts? Let's start with you, Drew, with what went down. I mean, and may I add that this is the first time in about 16 years that we've had all number one seeds get in. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the big storyline that we're seeing is like, I think people are already kind of jumping the shark a little bit with the whole, this is the death of the Cinderella, the death of the mid-major and whatnot, which I mean, there's point blank, there's not enough data to support that, first and foremost. It's been 1 year. And like this has happened before. It's not common, but it has happened before. And I mean, let's also be real. Like, how often do we see, like, it's not like we have Final Fours with all double digit seeds. Like, it's usually 2 or 3 top teams and 1, maybe 2 and when we say underseeded, we mean like a 5 seed gets in, or when UConn won it 2 years ago, I think as a 4. Like, so that's the big story. I mean, the games have been pretty great. I do think this just kind of backs up the fact that we've been saying all year that like these top 4 teams in particular have been machines. Like they've either just been, Auburn mowing through one of the most brutal non-conferences we've seen, Duke taking kind of revitalizing the whole kind of one and done model and really, hitting on that. Houston being this kind of just unkillable team that just never seems to go away, and then Florida just kind of emerging, getting hot at the right time. So, I mean, I don't really have too many complaints. I mean, I've watched a lot and missed a lot simultaneously. Like I missed pretty much all the opening round games, but I got to catch the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight games. So, I think we're just kind of seeing the creme de la creme. It was separation this year. Now, if this becomes more of a trend, it could be a little bit disconcerting. But I mean, we're not that far removed from, Colorado State was a travel away from advancing. Gonzaga Houston was a really early round matchup that had a mid-major team that could have potentially made a run. So, yeah, I think it's been interesting. I mean, Texas Tech.
UC San Diego,
yeah, UC San Diego gave Michigan State a scare. McNeese handled business early. I mean, hell, Texas Tech choked. They should have been there. Texas Tech choked. But yeah, I think it's been really fun. I mean, now it's just kind of we're gonna see with all the, and I know Josh touched on this, with all the guys in the portal now. It's a little concerning from that standpoint of the madness element, because NIL is now reaching its kind of peak and it's now becoming so prevalent. We're seeing like everybody was it was all 1-2s and 1-3 in the Elite Eight. So I understand people's concern, but it's made for pretty entertaining basketball. And I do think from what we've said all year and what I've seen all year is the 4 best teams are in the Final Four. I don't think that's really debatable. I think these have been the 4 best teams in the country all year. And here they are.
We definitely shouldn't be complaining about that.
Yeah, I think the only team that there's 2 teams that my early hype didn't meet was Gonzaga, which petered out, midway through and ended up getting hot, but not enough to avoid Houston. And then I was very high on Iowa State early in the year. At one point, I did say that they were a top 4 team in the country early in the year. The injuries and stuff popped up, but other than that, I mean, these have been, in my opinion, the 4 best teams in the country for the last 60 days.
Yeah, start to finish. Yeah. I think from start to finish.
Yeah, for sure. So can't really complain there. But it will be interesting to see going forward. It'll be really interesting to see.
I think this stuff is going to start to swing around. It's going to start to balance out. It's weird about humanity in general, how we have to go to extremes before we hit equilibrium. And this goes from politics to just about anything, social norms. And I think the guys, I think what's happening right now is a lot of the mid-majors just have zero depth. They might be able to get 5 good players, but they really have zero depth. Where a lot of these good teams, like the top 20 teams in the country, probably have more depth than they need. Those guys we're now seeing go in the portal. And which is kind of odd because some of them you think, well, we'll get to the portal later, but I think we're going to reach a happy minimum where people are not going to go. They're going to stop going to these stocked roster teams because they're going to say, hey, if I go there, I may not get a lot of playing time. Let's look at Darlington Dubar. Now I know he had injuries, and I think he had a death in the family early in the season. But with Tennessee, even so, when he was healthy and getting back in the groove, he hardly got any playing time with Tennessee after being a Player of the Year candidate in the Coastal Athletic. Do you really want to do that? Is that how you want to end your career, playing 11 minutes a game? Or maybe instead of going from Hofstra to Tennessee, maybe you go from Hofstra to, I don't know, Memphis or Florida Atlantic or something like that, where you can actually, you're taking a step up, but you're not going to a place. Because even if Rick Barnes wanted to play Dubar, who's he going to bench?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we're already seeing it swing that way a little bit. I mean, being a guy who was in mid-major conferences with the two biggest ones out by me now being the WTC and the Mountain West. Like we saw with Brendan Pajemski, kid was at Illinois, didn't play, goes to Santa Clara, was co-WTC Player of the Year with Drew Timme. Now the team, left some be desired, but that's kind of been the Herb Sendek thing. I think he should be on the hot seat. That's another topic. I think a guy that I think epitomizes that this year though is Mark Mitchell at Missouri. He's on that stack. He's on a Duke. These guys are coming in. He leaves. He goes to Missouri. And he's average, and he put up 14-5 in 2 or 3, and he shot
And he
the
was
ball
the best player on that team.
Yeah, so it's like I know that SEC team, but I do think there will be a little bit of an equilibrium, and I do think that the spending is going to get. I think teams are they're spending now, and the money. Everyone's talking about the money, and like I said, we'll get to the portal, but I think teams are going to start realizing that like Kansas is the cautionary tale. They can throw all the money in the world, they can go get all the biggest names they want, but there's still things having been on a basketball staff, having been around college basketball. I get it, it's not D1, but do the guys even like each other? Are they coachable? Do they fit a system? That's something that, people, I mean, I'm on all these, forums following my favorite team, and everyone's freaking out that we don't have a Ryan Nembhard replacement. I go, well, yeah, like everyone was like, we want Trey Donaldson. He'll be great with Kentucky. It's like, well, time out. Who's he trying to replace? Nembhard and him are not the same guy. We're trying to replace Ryan Nembhard. That doesn't make sense. And I think these people are playing fantasy basketball. And I think these teams are starting to play fantasy basketball where it's just throwing cash. I'm going to get Hunter Dickinson. I'm going to get Zeke Mayo. I'm going to get Rylan Griff, all these guys. And it doesn't work. So I think I think you're right, Rich. I think players are going to start to become more intentional. Like, okay, if I want to get to the next level, the best way to play in the NBA is to have a resume and stats. It's better to be Yaxel Lendenborg than it is to go be the 9th guy on Duke's bench. And then I think the other thing we're going to see is I think teams starting to realize, like, okay, hold on. We're not just going to have an unlimited checkbook because these are still human beings.
Right.
And like,
that's the other thing. They're not gonna throw $750K at AJ Storr again. He can forget that. He's not getting that like he did last year. So, and AJ Storr was the weirdest pickup for Kansas, because he's always been known as kind of a ball stopper, a ball hog, doesn't really put in the defense, doesn't really do much besides score, and you need to have the ball in his hands all the time to make it work. So, yeah, how is that going to work with Hunter Dickinson? How is that going to work with the other guards, So I think teams are getting burned already, and they're like, whoa, this is just not worth it. I mean, you look at Auburn. Auburn brought back their core, and that included a lot of guys that played like JUCO or at the JUCO level, or at least a few guys that played at the JUCO level before. Okay, Duke's the exception because they brought in, this tremendous freshman class. But then Houston's core was basically coming back. And then who am I forgetting? Florida, their core was basically returning. And the only reason why we didn't, weren't in love with Florida in the preseason is because, a lot of their front court players were young. Were they who expected, all those guys to like have career years? And, we knew they were good, but yeah. So, all right, Joey, what are your thoughts on what's gone down so far? And you can continue with this vein or go a different direction.
Yeah, it's funny, Drew, like the rant you just went on is the rant I've been going on for the last week or so. I've been like tracking some of the biggest transfer players. And Rich, I agree. I think the pendulum is going to completely swing. We were talking about this year, there wasn't much madness. I think next year there's going to be a lot of madness because like every team, all the players are graduating or transferring, or like so few players are returning. And I'm looking at like the top portal players, and like I'm not seeing a lot of common trends. Like I'm seeing a lot of players kind of going everywhere because, as we talked about, like, players, they're going to want playing time. So I'm having like a harder time, identifying who are going to be the big teams next year. I think there's
it's quite early, and we don't know what's going to shake out with the draft. And the other thing is, we don't even know what's going to shake out with all these seniors in the portal.
Right.
They're supposed to be gone.
Yeah.
That's what we were told. And so I've already have an inquiry into the NCAA. I think my contact there is at the Final Four, so she's not getting back to me right away. So we're probably gonna have to wait, for some clarification. By the way, Jacob or Nosovic, remember we said we heard he was going to go in the portal, and then we didn't see him in the portal, and I was like, well, how could he go in the portal when he's a senior? He's in the portal. So 4 years, he's played 4 years, and I thought this was the end of the 5-year thing. So
now the timing is now the JUCO ruling. So all the COVID guys are done, and now that JUCO ruling. I'm just saying, there's gonna be more guys now because now there's gonna be the other guys who played 4 years.
Right.
But now that rule.
I'm talking about guys who have played 4 years in D1 NCAA, like Jacob, and he's in the portal. How can this be? And he's also not been. He's never had like an injury shortened year or anything like that. Well, he did, but he played like at least half the season.
I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be the 8 game. I think it's 8 games is the max.
See, now I was actually told by an SID this year from the Big Ten. I think I won't mention names, but a Big Ten SID did tell me, if you play 1 game, that ends your red shirt. Now, of course, we know there's appeals. We've seen it over and over again where guys have played like 4 or 5 games. So you're saying 8 games. He told me 1 game.
I do think it's weird. I forget. There's like all these little nuances around it. I think it is like if you make an appearance, but then like you can appeal. It's not as cut and dry as they make it seem. I think textbook it is if you play and suit up, but I also think that there's like it's not as cut and dry as you played 1 game, you're not a redshirt anymore. At least in my experience.
I think you're absolutely right. I think there's an appeal process. And and I think what it looks to me is like if you maybe played like less than like 100 minutes or maybe even 200 minutes, you usually get your red shirt. Joey, did I cut you off on your thought or?
I was just gonna add that like I agree with you. I think a lot of the best teams, and you were saying this too, Rich, is like all the best teams, they're not the ones that rebuild everything in the portal. That's what happens with Kansas. Is if you just go out and get all the best players, it's all about system fit. And I think one of the exceptions to that though is Maryland, because they went out and got Gillespie, Rice, and Miguel, and that worked. But I don't even think you could make that argument because those guys are system fits. I mean, Maryland, if you look back like the Anthony Cowan and Jalen Smith days, right? You have the 2 bigs, the point guard, and then the 2 wings, and like that wasn't them going to get the best players. That was them getting guys that fit the system. And I think that really worked. And I think we're starting to see that more with the portal. It's not just, I see Kentucky linked with every single player. And I think that if, Kentucky could be next year's Kansas, depending on who they get. But I'm seeing a lot more of system fits, more precise decision making. Like it's not just everyone going to the Blue Bloods kind of thing. But yeah,
go ahead.
I was just saying, then in terms of next year, I started bringing up, it's just we have no idea what the system because there's still a lot of players where we don't know where they're going to go. I'm sure there's still a lot of players that are going to enter the portal that haven't yet, and then we don't know who's going to go in the draft. I was looking at Arkansas because I was watching them. If they can bring back that core, they'll be awesome. But I don't know what Fland and Wagner and and Brazil and Knox are going to do. Are they all going to are they going to go to the draft and go on? They're not all going to get drafted. Are they going to go and get undrafted? Are they going to come back? I imagine some mixture, but there's still so much to be seen.
Right. Kentucky, by the way, they brought in far more players than Kansas this year, but they picked players for a role.
Right.
He said, this is what you're going to do. Amir Williams, you're going to be our point center. Kobe Brea, you're gonna be one of our gunners. LeBron Butler, you're gonna be our point of attack defender and distributor. They gave each guy was picked for a role. They didn't they didn't bring in anybody who was like ball dominant like AJ Storr. So,
Yeah.
Josh, we've left you out of this discussion. What are your thoughts?
It's all good. No, I mean, this is a great combo. I think just me personally with this, I'm seeing all one seeds and stuff. I think this is a good year for this. I think an entertaining year. I think it's going to be. I don't know, I think a lot of fans are like worried so much about the future, and I feel like it's like I think I really liked what you said, Rich, about like just the even just like social norms and just political like aspects. Like everyone's like so worried about like what's happening now, what's happening in the future, rather than just focusing on the now. And I think like this is going to be a very entertaining Final Four. I think we've got four great teams with four tremendous teams of talent, and like I think in the sense of I'm piggybacking off what Joey said about how now coaches are more fitted for like system players rather than just throwing money at the best player possible. I think I kind of like what Joey was saying about how a lot more teams will be doing that in the future. I think Kelvin Sampson was a great example. I think he has a system of, how he plays defensively, just how he goes off just a set of set plays of everything. Like you said, like Kobe Bryant, is the known shooter for Kentucky. You got, Manuel Sharp. He's that type of role player. And Miles Uzon's a great point guard for them. Juwan Roberts, feed him down the post. Like everyone knows their roles on these teams. And that goes off for every team in the Final Four. And I think these four teams currently, it's a good blueprint for future teams to see, okay, this is what I have to do for success. This is what I need. And this is what is going to happen, under my type of coaching I play in a sense. So more and more transfers are going to happen, I think, as well after the dead period. After the Final Four, more teams are going to look into, more players. It's been heating up as of late, but I think after this dead period, we'll finally know how many players will finish in the portal.
Right. I can't remember a Final Four where I wouldn't be surprised if any of the four won. I can't remember one. Usually there's at least one team who's like, nah, they're lucky to be here. Like last year, NC State. NC State ain't winning this. NC State's going down, in the semis, but this year, I mean, Auburn is quote unquote the longest shot, but they're also the number one overall seed in this tournament, and from start to finish, probably had the most impressive year. But here's one thing I want to make a point out for everyone to note for next season. Most of the teams that got off to a good start this year, or a lot of them, already had their core. They had their core, and they just added a couple pieces. There were exceptions, Duke, Kentucky, but most of them had their core. And I really think, and you look, Florida had Clayton and Richardson coming back. They had the big guys coming back. The new Elijah Martin was a newcomer. Chinula was a newcomer, but really, if you look at like their four best players, the four best players were there last year, and Auburn brought back like 6 or 7 guys from the year before that all played significant minutes. And yeah, I just think that really keeping your core is probably the most important thing you can do.
Really, really quick, Rich, just because we were talking about it. So on medical red shirts, it's suffer a season-ending medical thing, so injury or illness. It has to occur before the halfway point of the season, and you cannot have participated in more than 30% of your games. So that's why a guy like Tucker DeVries can play 8 games in his 4th year and still get the year back because he did.
Wow.
So those are and then you have to provide medical, but those are the two big things. It's you didn't play. It has to end your season before the halfway point, and you can't participate more than 30% of the games.
What's the definition of the halfway point? Is it a
It
date?
doesn't.
Is it a date or your games divided
I'm
by
assuming
2, or-
it's total. I'm assuming it's out of games
Probably
scheduled.
total games, yeah.
Total games. That's usually
so that
they
would
usually
probably
try to
be
avoid,
around Christmas time, January.
they usually try to avoid. In my experience, NCAA, they try to avoid dates. They try to go based on just like percentage of minutes game. They always try to do it based on that because every date's not created equal, right? Like if a team plays in a
Right.
FIBA tournament, that's different than a team who doesn't. Stuff like
Right.
that.
Gotcha.
I think also Luke Goody, he applied for
Yeah.
medical red shirt for a fifth
Yeah.
year. And he played like maybe I think 8 or 9 games sophomore year.
If you're under
And he didn't play the
10,
rest.
you're probably in a pretty good spot. If you're under 10
It's just
games,
it's just usually like
You're
it's
under what, Drew? I
it's so
didn't hear.
flip flop.
if you're under like 10 games, I would say you're in a like 10 games played, you're probably in a pretty good spot to get it. But you never know with the NCAA. You never know. Like
As long as those
very
10 games
flip-flop.
were at the end of the season.
yeah, that's right. Like as long as you played at 10 games, because if you exceed like you
So
don't
that's
exceed
why
that-
that's why we see when a guy gets banged up and they don't bring him back. You're like, come on,
Yeah.
you said this guy was coming back in a few weeks and he hasn't played for the rest of the season.
that could be it. Yeah. There's definitely strategy there. I mean, there's people that have pointed to that being the reason they shut down Tucker. There's the whole conspiracy of the family being, of Devin Nunes being in contact with Indiana that whole time. And I'm not pointing fingers one way or the other, but that's kind of part of the conspiracy theory is once he kind of knew the job was his, or he had an inkling that he might be able to get it, he shut down Tucker because he's like, well, if he's
Or
not
maybe he
enough-
shut down Tucker because things weren't going bad, and why not bring him back for a full year?
Yeah.
No matter if he's at West Virginia or Iowa.
Yeah, but whatever the process is, but just to give you some clarity.
I mean, you knew West Virginia wasn't going to win the national championship, but we also knew pretty early that they might make the tournament. And so, I don't know, things were going pretty well even without him.
Yeah.
Josh, I cut you off.
Yeah, no, we were just was mentioning about like how the NCAA is like they're very flip flop with these medical like red shirt waivers and stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I would love to see Goody back another year for IU. I think it'd be a great piece to what Coach DeVries he's building. But I mean, it's on his side right now. He only played 8 or 9 games, so hopefully that's in his favor.
Right. Yeah, that sounds like he has a kind of surprising though that you can go back retroactively and try to challenge that, but why wouldn't you challenge that right away? And then if you don't want to use the extra year, don't use the extra year. You know what I'm saying? Like
that
if all
happened
this,
to Folly
makes
Dante.
sense.
huh?
With Folly Dante, people were mad when he didn't get another year.
Right.
His sophomore year, he only played in 5 games, and they
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
that. But he was trying to get that back from 3 years ago and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, you should challenge it right away, kids. Get that extra year, and maybe you want it, maybe you don't. You don't have to use it. All right. So, believe it or not, since the last time we talked to the portal, over 500 guys in a week have entered. We're now close, or actually, we're more than 1,800, closing in on 1,900. It's hard to keep up with this. So
Nuts.
I'm just looking down the list, and you guys can. I'll tell you some of the surprises on here for me. Yaxel Lendenborg, I think he played at the JUCO level, so he has an extra year. I'm not surprised he's trying to move. My feeling is if you dominated a certain level, especially a lower level, get the hell out. Or no matter what level it is, get the hell out. If you're dominating at Duke, time to go to the pros. If you're dominating at UAB, it's time to go to, Kentucky. So yeah. Jaden Quaintance. How about that one? Anyone see that coming? Now, this is a 5-star, top 10 recruit, who is not eligible for the draft because he's so young. I think he just turned 18 or might still be 17. Now, he was one of these guys that got shut down at the end of the year. So I'm actually a little bit surprised, but this kid, he reminds me, him and Flory Badunga of Kansas, who's also in the portal. That one really surprised me. because I thought he was going to be the building block for Kansas next year. You know, their shot blocker, their rim protector, their rim runner. So yeah, those two are both in the portal, which probably means they're not going in the draft, and I think that's wise. You know, athletically, defensively, you know, they're there, but offensively, they're not, and so Magoon Guath, we mentioned him being in the portal last year. Apparently, San Diego coughed up some money because he's coming back to San Diego State. That was interesting. Here was another big surprise for me. Silas Demery, one of my favorite young players, only a sophomore, has really it was a 4-star at Georgia, had a solid freshman year, then had a really good sophomore season this year, and I really think he's a big point guard. Still needs to get a consistent jump shot, but this kid shows the ability to do just about everything you want from a point guard. I think he's a serious pro prospect. He's going to UConn. By the way, Aiden Mahaney in the portal. Aiden Mahaney bit off more than he could chew, and he's not ready for the Big East. Probably never will be ready for the Big East. So it'd be interesting to see where he falls. Now, here's a couple guys that I thought were out of eligibility. That was like, what? Michi Johnson. Now, as far as I know, I think Michi's a 5th-year guy. And apparently he's in the portal, and South Carolina's taking him back. So go figure. Oscar Clough. Oscar Clough has played 4 years at the D1 level. He played at Washington State. Then this year he dominated the Summit Conference and South Dakota State. Now he's going to Purdue. He's going to be Purdue's big man. I personally, I don't know. Matt Painter lost a lot of key supporting guys like Miles Colvin and Heidi. And these guys, I really think if you put them on a team where they could actually touch the ball a little more, would actually shine. I really think Colvin and Heidi have much more talent than they're able to show at Purdue. I don't know. Matt Painter, I mean, he always does well, but man, is this the route you want to go with big old Oscar Clough, you know, touching the ball every time down the court? I mean, he's no Zach Edey.
I mean, I think, again, it's like going back to what we said about how just like a system player that fits like a coaching style. And, you know, Coach Painter, he's known for, you know, he had success with Edey. He's had success with a lot of big guys, you know, even Trey Kaufman-Renn, who's really had a great year this past year. I think it's just kind of like a molding of just, you know, what they're trying to I wouldn't say reincarnate Zach Edey in a sense, but like, you know, they're trying to replicate some sort of, you know, playing style of, you know, Edey, you know, kind of dumping it to him, you know, you get TKR. So I mean, interesting to see. I mean, I think it's nice that Matt Painter and Purdue finally went into the portal and got someone, you know, decent style of play. And they usually aren't big on entering the portal, more just working with the freshmen and kind of building them up. So it's definitely a new territory for them, I think.
The problem with Oscar Clough is he's not athletic at all. He can't run the court. He can't. He's not a shot blocker. You know, so you already have a guy to dump the ball into that actually is pretty athletic, and Kaufman-Renn. What are you doing with Clough? And you already have 2 other 7-footers. One of them's you had 3 7-footers. One of them's 7'3", and one went into the portal the minute Clough came on board. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just mad that Oscar Clough turned us down to be on the show. I don't know.
What I'm wondering though is with Clough coming in, TKR is only a junior, so I was thinking he was going to come back, but I feel like Clough. I can't imagine those two playing together. Their play styles
right,
with
exactly.
Clough. So I wonder if that means if TKR is going to the portal. I don't think he's ready. I don't think he is.
Is it possible TKR went to his coach and said, "Hey, coach, I want to stop this playing in the post. I'd like to do more."
Maybe. Or maybe he thinks he's ready for the draft. Who knows?
In today's
No,
landscape,
he's
I
not
think
ready for the
Joey.
draft.
I think
That's
Joey's
what I
right, though.
think. I don't know what he thinks.
There's no
I think
way.
Joey's right.
What, Drew?
I think Joey. I wouldn't be shocked if. I think the players that get the most screwed in college basketball are the really dominant low post guys, but because they're not stretch fours or they're freakish rim protector athletes, they get kind of like that mold of player can dominate college but gets no love in the NBA. I wouldn't be surprised if Kaufman Ren, maybe like Joey said, hey, coach, I want to maybe try to experiment and do some other things for his own draft stock sake. And that being like, yeah, we're not doing that. Because I think that's something too where coaches are having a hard time balancing is guys with the
Kaufman
NBA.
Ren's not in the portal. Did he
I know, but
prepare
like
for the draft?
no, but I mean I wouldn't be surprised if he does.
He hasn't said anything yet.
I can't see those guys playing together. I have
Right,
no
I
idea how
just-
those two work.
Right.
Right, I just
So-
think with Clough coming in, I just think that Clough coming in means TKR has got to be on the way out. That would be my guess.
unless they plan on using him in a different way.
Maybe.
Of course, we said this with Vlad
Golden,
Golden and
yeah.
Danny Wolf, but I mean, who knew Danny Wolf was going to turn out to be Michigan's point guard? I mean, I knew he was a good passer, but I just didn't think he had the athleticism.
I don't think
to play
any of
on
us
the,
saw that coming. Hitting step back threes and
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
maybe it could be like an Indiana situation with like Paulo and Renew.
Yeah, look how well that went.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah,
That.
Indiana didn't really start playing well until they stopped doing that. Drew, is there any players on this list? And if you get down to the very bottom, I know I have some duplicates here, but if you get down to the very bottom, there's some guys that I didn't look at Josh's list, and I just put on what I had gathered.
Yeah.
And so, but down at the very bottom, we have some guys that have already committed to teams, and then the top of the list is kind of mostly guys that haven't committed. Some have committed, and Josh has noted that. So, anybody on here that any few players that you find interesting?
Yeah, I mean, I think one guy we kind of touched on is like what's going to happen with AJ Storr. I think he's kind of, I think, fair or unfair, going to turn to the poster child of why this transferring stuff is just a mess and is ugly. I mean,
Him and Coleman Hawkins.
Yeah, I would say like they've done the vaunted 8 for 8, 8 years, 8 schools kind of thing. And I remember when I made this comment last year with him getting in the portal, I think Caleb kind of said that stuff had happened with the high schools and stuff. But when you've been in 8 schools in 8 years, at some point, there's a common denominator. So I think I don't know what the fit's going to be, to be honest. Like, I don't know how many people are going to be able to look at him from Kansas and knowing what kind of transpired with the money he was demanding and how that kind of played off the court. He'll be interesting because I think we know there's a player in there that has all conference Big Ten upside. Like we know that's there. Just where's that going to play itself out? That's a guy that I could see maybe needs to. I'm not saying he might be better suited going to a program that's not one of these power, like a good program that's not in a power conference and kind of finding his own way there, going to a strong coaching staff. That might be the best bet for him. I think,
I think he has to be the man.
Yeah, I think he has to be the man. I think, one that's interesting. I think another narrative one is, what's RJ Lewis going to do? I mean, you're coming off the revitalization of St. John's or the Big East Player of the Year, and obviously the way that it ended with him being benched, and now he's in the portal. And I was reading something saying that he's not even looking for the draft. Like he's 100% committed to finding a new school.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me because I think he's a very borderline prospect, right now.
I totally agree with that. And then, some of these other mid-major guys are always interesting to me. Like you've got a Michael Ratai going to Baylor. Like he was the best player on a bad Oregon State team. Guys like that are always touch and go. Like, yeah, you averaged 17 and 7 in the WCC, but your team sucked. And, are you going to be, the next Michael Ajayi where you step up that level and you kind of go off a cliff? Is it going to blossom him? He'll be interesting. And then, the guy that I'm really curious is Donovan Dent going to UCLA, choosing UCLA over what it looked like was Kentucky and Gonzaga. I think that's really interesting. I don't think it's a great basketball fit.
Or following his coach to Xavier.
I mean, I when I saw the list of teams that he had finalized, that he didn't go Pitino to Xavier, and that he turned down Kentucky and Gonzaga to go to UCLA, from a pure basketball standpoint, that one was a bit of a head scratcher.
Why?
I don't know. I just feel like his style of play with the ball in his hands. And maybe I'm selfish, but I'm trying to imagine like in a Mark Pope or a Mark Few offense, I think would be really great. Maybe I'm just not much of a Mick Cronin guy, but I just think that those
Well,
teams, they need a guard for sure. But like,
right. That's what I was going to say. All year, what was missing from UCLA was they didn't have a good point guard.
for sure, I just
That was
they
the
got
one
guys hitting
thing
the portal.
preventing that team from being a Sweet 16 team and maybe even higher, I think.
Yeah, no, I don't know if we'll see. I mean, Mick Cronin is obviously a kind of grinded out
Yeah.
defense. Like, when you think about like it's more like they needed a point guard, and they got what might be end up being the best one in the portal for sure. I was talking more from the standpoint of like just coaching philosophy. Like his game, in my opinion, would have translated much better to either following Patino because we know that works, or the other two schools that supposedly were in his final three. We can never confirm that, but I'm just like the damage that guy could do in a Mark Pope or a Mark Few offense would have been phenomenal. I'm not saying he's not going to be good. We know he can play. It's just I think it doesn't help that apparently he got $3 or $4 million thrown his way, and it's a homecoming for him. So I'm curious to see how it works. And I don't know if Mick Cronin. I feel like he's very much so a coach that is a very specific type of. There's a very specific kind of like archetype you have to fill to play for him. I mean, he's already got guys hopping in the portal. I think Mara's gone. Did Sebastian Mack, I think, jumped in, if I'm not mistaken.
Mara's gone?
Mara's in the portal, yeah.
Yeah, AD Mara.
Yeah.
Or Dylan Andrews,
I think Dylan Andrews, yeah.
And Dylan Andrews. Okay, yeah.
Dylan Andrews, they'll say good riddance, but Mara was getting more and more involved.
Yeah.
I mean, he was becoming a force.
The guy was averaged almost 2 blocks a game, and he didn't even eclipse 15 minutes a game.
But toward the end of the season,
yeah.
he was the key to that team.
No, I mean, in a good way. Like he was putting up some like legitimate numbers, and he's averaged out for the year 13 minutes a game. Not bad. So, I mean, we'll see. It's the portal. I mean, we're all talking about this, and there'll probably be at least 1 or 2 more big bombshells when these Final Four teams finish.
I wonder if Mara wants out because Bilodeau's still there, and he doesn't want to. I mean, they did use Bilodeau and Mara together, which I thought was basically the way to go because Bilodeau really is a power forward. I wonder what's going on there. That's interesting.
So maybe I'm just a spurned Gonzaga fan who would have thought Dent and Few would have been beautiful basketball music together. So maybe I'm just butthurt, but I also think Mick Cronin's a tough guy to play for. So we'll see.
I agree. Yeah. Joey, and what guys catch you on this list?
Right off the bat, we touched on him earlier, Rich, but Jaden Quaintance. I was really surprised to see his name because I understand the commitment to Arizona State, right? You want to go somewhere where you're going to be the man. But then, like, I don't get transferring. I feel like if you were just going to transfer after a year, like, you knew what you're getting yourself into, just commit to a big school anyway. But regardless, I think he's a really special talent. I got to see him in person in the tournament in Atlanta when Ohio State lost by, like, 70 to Auburn. It sucked. But watching Quaintance was really cool. He's a really special player. I feel like he kind of has, like, a Derek Queen kind of archetype of like, I see them both as, like, Joel Embiid-esque of big men that can really handle the ball, can shoot it, can block shots, get up and down the court. I think he's really special. I feel like of all the people in the portal, if you told me one of them was going to be a superstar in the NBA, I think Quaintance would be my pick. And then he's not on our list, but another name I wanted to mention was Jakari White out of North Dakota State. I could really see him being the next, Dalton Connect, Sears, just the next like I don't know about that good, but just the next mid-major guy to, kind of take over a bigger program and have a really solid year. He's great shooter, just all around solid wing. And then also my guy, Trace Eaglestaff, finding his way to South Carolina. It's my favorite, my least favorite player. We have Eaglestaff and Michi in the backcourt. That's going to be an absolute movie to watch. They're both going to be putting up 70 shots a game.
I can literally see them, at the top of the key, like fighting over the ball.
Michi's going to be 1 for 27. Eaglestaff's going to be like 10 for 40. So that'll be really interesting to watch. And then I was really curious to see what Jacoby Gillespie and really just him, Rodney Rice, the whole Maryland Villanova thing. Really, that was a really interesting thing. I'm disappointed that Willard quit on our team before the game even started. That really frustrated me as a fan. But they might still be on good terms. I've heard Gillespie and Rice both linked to Villanova. I've also heard a lot of people saying Gillespie's going to head to Tennessee, which maybe that'll work. I mean, if they're
Well,
getting him to,
he played at Belmont, which is also in Nashville. Or I don't know if it's in Nashville, but it's in
yeah,
Tennessee.
it's in Nashville. I actually learned that yesterday from my sister. She lives in Nashville.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I mean, if they're trying to get Gillespie to replace Ziegler, then they're gonna have to find someone else because defense is not his forte. But he's a solid scorer, solid passer. You know, if Ziegler's gone, I think Lanier will be gone. He could make up for some of that scoring. So I'd say those are my guys.
Josh, what do you think of this massive list?
Yes, I was going through this today and I'm seeing, oh my God, like all these players, it's portal, it's nuts. I'd like to give a little, I think what Pat Kelsey has done with Louisville so far in the portal has been great. I think he's gotten 3 tremendous players in the portal. I'm a big fan of Ryan Conwell. I really wanted him to come over to Indiana, and I know he was in his top 3, but it's I'm sure they gave him a decent amount of money over at Louisville. I think also Isaac McNeely, he was kind of the guy at Virginia last year.
He's a bucket.
He's a bucket, yeah.
He's kind of like I don't know if he has the wiggle of Sean Padula, but he certainly can make baskets like Sean Padula.
Yeah. And he's a big guy too. He's got a good frame.
He's bigger than Padula.
Strong.
Yeah,
he is big. Yeah. So I think on the perimeter they've got 3 great players.
And Adrian Woolley came out of nowhere at Kennesaw. To have a tremendous. In fact, he's not an unfamiliar name to me because I actually wrote to Kennesaw during the season to ask him to be on the show because I was looking at some freshmen that were really standing out at small schools, and he was on a very short list.
Right. Yeah. And no, I think it's just great. What so far what Coach Kelsey has done over there, revitalizing that program has been great. In regards of my teams, I'm a little upset about the whole RJ Lewis thing. I think he's, I was, reading, what Coach Pitino was talking about, people saying that, the benching had, a thing to it. I don't know. I think this was, that was maybe just the cherry on the top, I think. It was building, a lot of tension I heard throughout the year. Wherever he goes, I hope he does well. I think he's a tremendous player. He's got a lot of talents. Definitely, he's more of a scorer rather than a playmaker. So I think, as next year goes on, developing a playmaking ability along with his scoring style, I think would be great for an NBA team. Also, to replace RJ Lewis, I thought getting Bryce Hopkins from Providence is a really good get for Coach Pitino. When he's healthy, he's, I think, an all-conference player. I think he has a chance to be All-American as well. So, bringing him over from Providence was, I think, a good get for him. And, I'm a big fan of the guy that, was a little shocked to enter the portal before Badunga. It reminds me of Khalil Ware a little bit. I think just his potential, just upside of, a long player like him. I think he's has untapped potential. I don't think they developed him well over in Kansas as much, not getting enough playing time a little bit. I think, working with Hunter Dickinson was kind of it was a slow approach throughout the season. So, I think next year, wherever he lands with, I think as a starter, I think he has a really good chance to make some good noise and potentially an NBA prospect as well.
Right.
And my last guy I like to talk about is, we've talked about him on the show before, but, Abdi Bashir Jr. from Monmouth, he led the league in 3-pointers made. He's just exhilarating to watch. I think he's a great player, offensive talent as well. I know his brother committed to Auburn, so, I think there's some talk about him as well, teaming up with his brother over at Auburn with Keyshawn Hall, who would transfer over to Auburn as well. So, it'd be exciting to see what Abdi does.
Yeah, coming from Monmouth. A couple other guys I would have mentioned. Kanan Catchings got hurt toward the end of the year for BYU and then basically fell out of the rotation. And then Zavonavir Ivicic, I don't know. They're making it all confusing. Now they're multiple pronunciations of his name. So basically, we'll just say Big Z. But he's leaving Arkansas, and I kind of don't blame him because Calipari just never seemed to know how to use him, unlike, how his brother was used at Illinois. One night he would play 30 minutes or, maybe maybe not that many, but high 20s, and then the next game he played 3 minutes. So Calipari has a tendency to do stuff like that, and as a player, I think even as a fan, it's kind of annoying. So not surprising he's in the portal. All right. So we don't have we don't have really a complete list of the early entries, and I don't think many guys have yet to. I think there's a lot of guys. There's going to be a ton of guys that are going to declare. And again, we're still wondering what the senior situation is, but some guys we know that have declared are Oklahoma guard Jeremy Fears, of course, a young freshman. Liam McNeely of UConn's declared. Dylan Harper, of course, from Rutgers. RJ Luis, who we don't think is really going to stay in the draft. Nate Biddle of Oregon are some of those names. I know the kid from Blackwell from Wisconsin declared today.
John Blackwell.
Yeah, I don't see him staying in the draft. And a lot of guys are just doing this for information. And some of them get good feedback. I think if you get invited to the combines, you do get good feedback. I think if you don't really get a sense. I think a lot of guys just get a number. If you were in the draft, this is where you'd probably go. So it's not all guys get a ton of feedback. But I think the guys who have a legitimate shot do get feedback. And of course, we know the guys who get invited to the combines usually have a legitimate shot. And I'm talking about the G League combine, NBA combine, not the other independent combines. So any thoughts about who's declared for the draft so far?
You mentioned Blackwell. I don't. Speaking of Wisconsin, I don't see Tonje on here, but he did I saw on his social media page, he did a whole goodbye post for Wisco. So I think that's as much a confirmation as you're going to get without him fully doing so. But I think he's going to the draft too. But then the other names I see here are just formalities. We knew Fears, McNeely, and Harper would go. So yeah, I think still a lot of names we're waiting to see.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to coaching changes, and we touched on this a little bit with Kevin Willard going from Maryland to Villanova. I will tell you, just before the tip-off of Duke and BYU, or not Duke and BYU, Alabama and BYU, everybody's sitting in the press room, getting ready, to go to their seats and stuff, and the news came across about Willard, and I usually hang around with the New York, New Jersey reporters, and man, the reaction was kind of funny because, in so many words, excuse my language, but in so many words, there's that whore, he'll go anywhere. And I don't know, they were seemingly, I think this is a lot of people who covered Seton Hall, but so I didn't know what to make of that, if it was just kind of like sour grapes from Seton Hall. Personally, as a Villanova fan, I thought Willard did a nice job of what he had. Actually, an exceptional job given the lack of depth on that team, and their key player was a freshman, and as Joey pointed out, nobody beside Reese returning. For some reason, I'm not as ecstatic about the hire. So yeah, I'll let you guys comment on these and we have a couple more. We have Buzz Williams going to Maryland. That one surprised me. Texas A&M is one of the biggest schools in the country, but so is Maryland. They're probably both top 10 in terms of size. This would seem to me to be a lateral move. Maybe, at first thought was, maybe it's because Texas A&M's a football school. But then I'm like, yeah, but didn't Kevin Willard complain that Maryland was a football school? Which they're not. Maryland's never been a football school. Maryland's never done anything in football. They're a basketball school. So get that straight.
I've watched 5 years of Talia Tagovailoa. I can attest to that.
But I'm serious. I mean, Maryland has always had a great basketball program and always had a Midland at best football program. So let's get real here. It never ceases to amaze me how these schools want to compete in football when they already are great at basketball. But anyway, and then Phil Martelli Jr. leaving Bryant to go to VCU. So comments, gentlemen. Joey, I'll start with you because you follow Maryland. What are your thoughts here?
I was just really frustrated with the way the whole Kevin Willard situation went down. I mean, I love what he'd done there. I mean, in a few years, he'd really turned us around because after the, Cowan and Smith era, we were really at a loss. But then he came in and he really turned things around. I think it was one of the better, I mean, the Crab Five, they had a great nickname, one of the better fitting starting lineups to, it's such a typical starting five, and I mean that in such a good way because you have your starting point guard, you have your 3-and-D wings, and you have your bigs. And I mean, that's really all you need. Reese and Queen complemented each other so well. We had plenty of shooting, plenty of scoring inside. Like, it was just a really well-constructed team. The guys seemed to get along great with Willard. There were a lot of funny press conference moments with Willard and Queen. It just seemed like great vibes all around. And then he just quit on the team before the Florida game even started. He didn't show up to the team meeting the night before. I mean, people knew he was gone before the game even happened, which is really frustrating. He Willard made all these comments about, the higher ups before the game, and then off he went. And I just thought that was kind of callous. I mean, at the very least, you finish it, you wait until your season's done.
Save it 24 hours.
Yeah. I mean, he was out of there before the game even started. And I thought that was really shameful. And the other thing is, I get Villanova's basketball. They've been big at basketball historically, and I'm sure they're going to throw a bunch of money. But Maryland's Villanova hasn't been that good lately. Like, I don't.
Well, since the 2 years that Kyle Neptune,
He who shall not be named.
Yeah, well, regardless, if he
is it
leaves
2 years or 3 years?
3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it felt like 20, but
Yeah.
My point is, if he leaves us for like a Kentucky or UNC or something, I understand that. But I mean, he's leaving them for a team that college basketball fans have just been bullying the last 2 years. And then, so that was just a little disappointing. And now all the players are going to leave. Gillespie and Rice immediately hit the portal. Reese is going to graduate. I'm sure Queen's going to go to the draft. And I like the Buzz Williams move. I think he's a good coach. I'm not really sure why he did it. I mean, Rich, you said it was a lateral move at best. Like, A&M has been really solid the last few years, and he seems to like it there. My other concern with him is I feel like, I mean, he's kind of been everywhere. So to me, this just feels like another stop for him. Like, I don't see him sticking around long term, which is kind of my fear. I kind of wanted.
I don't know why these guys can't stay at one place. I hear you. He's won everywhere. He's won everywhere he's gone, but every time he leaves, it's like, why are you leaving?
Right. Yeah. I was kind of hoping for someone that someone that hadn't been everywhere, someone that I could kind of trust to stick around for a little bit. I saw some Nate Oates rumors. I got really excited about that. He's one of my favorite coaches. I love the way he plays. I love his 3-point system, but he wasn't going to leave Bama for us. I was hoping for I forget the name, but George Mason's coach I saw being linked to us, and I like the idea of getting someone from a smaller school, someone that could kind of build a dynasty in Maryland, because I think Buzz Williams is just. I think in a few years he'll either get fired because Maryland's roster isn't good, or he'll win with the roster and then he'll go take a better job. So to me, this just feels like a placeholder spot. I'm a fan, a little disappointed with both of these things.
Yeah, I think in the case of Willard, I mean, Notre Dame experienced this with Brian Kelly, and Brian Kelly left Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati was undefeated, and they were going to a bowl game, and Brian Kelly up and left, and went to Notre Dame and didn't. And all I could think about was, now this is football, but all I could think about is he's going to do this to us one day. And sure enough, he did. So, but you could tell certain guys you could tell, like with Brian Kelly, you could tell he's full of shit. Like when he went to the press conference, his initial press conference at LSU, and this is Brian Kelly from Massachusetts, and he goes to the first LSU press conference and fakes a Southern accent. So Google it. So yeah, I don't know. Any comments on these coaching moves, Josh?
Yeah, I agree with what Joey said. In response to like the whole Kevin Willard situation, I don't know. I think it's kind of just like dodging the media in a sense. He's not really answering questions, not really so engaged with the Maryland team, and kind of just seems not wanting to be there at that sense. And it's like, I think that's like a sad way to go out, especially for a head coach. And like, I don't know, you spend a decent amount of time over there at Maryland. You develop a connection with these kids, with the fans, the whole program, and you're finally seeing some success. I think it was a great year for Maryland. Sweet 16, one of the best teams at the Big Ten. And like you had top 5, top 10 player in Derek Queen, and like just like everything about that team, just like they're a fun team to watch. I think watching them, they're enjoyable to watch. I really like Rodney Rice, Jacoby Gillespie, and like just the way it's like got like a sour taste in my mouth a little bit, just like how it went down. And am I going to say like Villanova is a better program to take over? I'd say right now, I mean, it's 50-50, but recent success, sure, yeah. I think Villanova's still one of the more premier jobs in response to. I think Jay Wright is still very involved with the program. He's kind of handpicked Kevin Willard to be the guy over there. So
well, since 1960, Villanova's won 4 national championships. Maryland's won 1.
Yeah, so I mean, it's more just going to the better school just for recent success. So he knows the Big East as well. So he coached at Seton Hall. I think in regards of coaching carousel, I think the Big East is probably one of the best coaching staffs, and just conference wise, I think it's great to keep adding more coaching talent. And in response, I think with Maryland, bringing over Buzz Williams, it's he's had success in Virginia Tech. A&M, he had a good year as well. And I kind of do agree with Joey saying this is more just like a pit stop to a better job in a sense. If he has success with this squad, with what he built in 2-3 years, and a big job opens up at one of these bigger schools, I'm sure they'll be calling. Or if he's not doing so well, they'll kick the can.
But there are no bigger schools in Texas A&M, Maryland. As I said, size wise, they're like top 5, top 10 in the country at worst. So,
So it's more just like
back in the day when Lefty Driesell was coaching that team in the ACC, there was North Carolina was number 1, Duke, NC State, and Maryland were like right behind. And every year Maryland had a top 25 team. So now you could never say that about Texas A&M. Texas A&M has really emerged over the Buzz Williams era, and before that maybe a little bit, but really Texas A&M basketball really hasn't been relevant except for maybe the last 10-15 years. Drew, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think the guys hit the nail on the head, with the Willard situation. It's just kind of a cold reminder that the coaches portal is always open. We do make all this conversation about the players, and it sucks. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is his best team he's ever had based solely on depth of tournament and just overall winning. And you would probably argue talent. I mean, I just have to go really back and look at some of the Seton Hall teams, but I can't imagine any of those teams being as good as this team. Definitely not a starting 5. So it kind of sucks. I mean, maybe he's always wanted to be in the Big East. I mean, he was at Seton Hall for like 10 years or something like that. 10, 11. He was there for a while. So maybe he always was trying to get back to the Big East. And, I've always I've always appreciated Nova. Now, growing up for me, Nova was a powerhouse, but, talked to my dad back when the old Big East. So maybe he just thought the brand and the name, and, there is probably something to be said. Like if you can be the guy to save Villanova basketball, that probably, could be a legacy he's chasing. I don't really know. It just sucks. Like Josh said, it's a sour taste. And, I don't think he's I don't think he's like an exceptional coach by any stretch. If I'm being honest, I think he's a good coach, but like he's been to one Sweet 16. Like it's not like we're getting you're not getting the second coming of Jay Wright. Like so whatever. It sucks, but it is kind of a cold reminder that's just the way the basketball world works now. I mean, you can leave whenever you want. I mean, we saw Sprinkle do it with Utah State. Everybody pretty much knew Danny Sprinkle was going to Washington before their game against Purdue in the tournament last year. Utah State goes out and gets slapped by 30 by Purdue, and he's out the door 2 days later up in Washington recruiting kids and throwing NIL money around. So it's just kind of the landscape we're in. Again, I agree with the guys on Buzz Williams. I think this is just a placeholder job. I think the guy's just collecting conferences at this point. He's been in the ACC with Virginia Tech. He's just been in the SEC with A&M.
Big East with Marquette.
Big East with Marquette. Now he's going to have the Big Ten with Maryland. So I think Josh and Joey are right. If he turns it around, which I think they will be competitive, they will win. He wins everywhere. But how long until another school comes knocking? You got these other big programs with maybe older coaches looking to step down, or you never know. I mean, you're hearing all these other programs and coaches maybe being kind of burned out of this era. Like, I don't think he's there for more than 5 years. I think he's there for 4 or 5 years, maybe one cycle. By that second, third, fourth year, they'll probably be pretty competitive. And then I think he's out. And then, looking at Martelli, I think that's like, just because you have it on there at VCU. I mean, he was at Bryant for 2 years, won 20 plus games. I mean, there's not really a lot to point at outside of that. He's only got 2 years of head coaching experience. Now he dominated the American East at Bryant. He lost 7 games in 2 years, so he dominated that conference. And he won 60+% of his games. So I think it's a fine hire. But Joey did say something that I just would like to touch on. Is like, I wish more of these like really good mid-major coaches maybe got a shot, because I think guys like that kind of maybe understand. Like, you get some of these really good mid-major coaches and you give them the resources that a Maryland or an A&M or a Villanova can provide, and I feel like those guys are, I don't know, maybe I'm just like romanticizing it, but I'd hope they're maybe a little bit more inherently like loyal and understand, like, if they can build winners at some of these small places, give them a chance. Maybe they don't want to leave because they don't want to go deal with the big brands of basketball, and it's kind of a different world. But it'd be really nice to see than the same 7 guys being recycled over 5-year cycles. I'm saying you win 60% of your games at Maryland, and then you're going to go win 60% of your games at Villanova, and then you're going to go win 60% of your games at, I don't know, Missouri, and then you're going to go from, it's like, okay, man. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's something romantic, for lack of a better word, about a coach being at a school for a long
for sure.
time.
Here's the thing: college basketball coaches are legends because of that. If you think of all of the side here named our most legendary coaches we can think of, it's guys who've been at places for 10, 15, not even 20 plus years. Nobody's going to remember Kevin Willard down the line unless, in my opinion, to be completely honest. Like, I think he's going to be a guy to look back like, oh, solid coach, but like, I don't think anyone's going to look back like that dude was a legend of the game. Buzz Williams, like, oh, legend of the game. You think Tom Izzo, you think Mark Few, you think those guys who went and built something. So I don't know, but it's the landscape. I mean, if somebody wants Buzz Williams in 5 years, they're going to throw him an extra $20 million a year and promise him a $5 extra million in NIL, and he's going to be out the door, no questions asked. That guy probably cares nothing about Maryland basketball. It means nothing to him. If all of a sudden tomorrow we get like a shocking news, or at the end of next season, it's like Bill Self done and Kansas calls Buzz Williams, that dude is gone out the door, no questions asked. Bags are packed. So that's what it is.
One more comment going back to the portal is, I'm going through trying to update, our draft board and database about where players are and who's in the portal, and one thing I noticed that I mean, some guys you're like, why did you, like, Ahmad Bradshaw, let's say at Ohio State, you play at Kentucky 1 year, okay, doesn't work out. You go to Ohio State, doesn't work out. Now you're going where are you going, Mr. 5-star, top of your recruiting class center? Where are you going? And it's almost like, and I have a question for you on this, Drew, but it's almost like they don't take responsibility for their own shortcomings, and I don't know how they expect to grow when they're jumping from system to system, and that includes training training facilities, just getting used to the school. You know, you're basically slowing your development because you're always changing everything. I mean, we all know what it's like to move. You know, everything's different. You got to get used to everything. If you stay at the school, you can stay in that, you know, strength program, and you get a strength and conditioning program, and you know people, and you can learn the system, and you can learn it better. But every year you're changing systems. You're just hurting your own development. And like, when do you actually take stock and say, hey, maybe this is not, it's not the school, maybe it's me. You know, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I got to do better instead of going looking for the school that's going to work for me. And the other thing I wanted to comment on is all these freshmen who didn't play much this year and are in the portal. I mean, you look at any like top 100 guy or top 150 guy that didn't play much this year, he's in the portal. Okay, I got a question for those guys. Why did you go to Duke? Why did you go to Alabama? Why did you go to, I get it, but what made you think you were going to get playing time? You weren't going to get playing time with the way the roster was built, and now you're in the portal. So why did you go there in the first place? Anybody with a brain would have known you're not going to get playing time. So I don't understand that either. But my question to you, Drew, is how many of these guys are actually being asked to leave? Have you heard? I mean, are there guys that are asked, say, hey, don't come back here?
Yeah, I mean, I think like that's actually a really common thing. Having been in basketball programs, being in a Division I football program, I think there is a lot of mutual agreement. You know, like again, I can speak to the programs I'm familiar with. I'm very confident that Gonzaga sat down with Dusty Stromer and Michael Ajayi, and we're like, look, guys, you're falling out. You're great kids. We're not going to force you out the door, like, because there is an element that I don't think people realize. Like, if you get a reputation as a coach who's that cutthroat, just like slicing kids' throats, you're never going to recruit again. But I think there's a mutual understanding. Like, it's not a fit. We have guys coming in, yada yada yada, whatever it is. And I think that that's actually pretty common. And I do think that that's something that I think a lot of people don't talk about, is that when we talk about these kids getting the portal, I think everyone goes to the worst extreme of like, it's money, it's money, it's money. And I think for a lot of guys it is, but I do think there is a handful of these guys that it is a mutual parting of ways. It's systematic. It's you've kind of fallen out of favor. And, you know, if you want to keep chasing this basketball dream, it's probably not a good idea to be here. I can't, I mean, when you look at this list, it's really hard when you look at the star players. I mean, a lot of these guys coming in, it's pretty hard to look at. You know, there's a guy like Yaxel, makes sense. Lendenborg's leaving because it's either NBA or I take the money out of it. But there's other guys.
He has nothing to prove at UAB anymore.
Yeah, you know, but there's other guys where it is a little like, it's touch and go. I'm a little like, why are you really leaving? You know, like Trey Donaldson, you were just a big part of a team that, you know, made a pretty solid run. Like,
exactly.
why are you packing up and leaving? You kind of have the keys to the kingdom at Michigan, is what it seems like,
Right.
You know. But part of it is, you know, the thought process of over recruiting. I do think that it's common because I think you kind of touched on it, Rich. Is like, I think less coaches and players are not, at least maybe less experienced coaches aren't prioritizing system as much, and they're doing the whole just collecting talent thing. And I think they're realizing like, maybe this guy's not a good fit. Maybe this, like, so there could be some of that. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if you have some of these Kansas guys, it is a mutual parting of ways, and Self is in there telling a guy like Rylan Griffin, like, hey man, this didn't work. You probably want to hit the portal. And it might be shocking because on paper, like, that guy was an Alabama player. That was a top 100 recruit. Like, why would you push him out the door? But it's like,
played in the Final Four.
Played in the Final Four. Like, I think the thing that people forget about basketball is it is a super rhythmic game. And I think the problem is everybody wants to be Steph Curry. And most of these guys don't realize you're probably Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. There are a handful of guys. Like, Cooper Flagg is Steph Curry. You build around him, he's the system, you figure it out. A lot of these other guys, find a role, you got to find a place. Draymond Green and Klay Thompson are what they were because they stayed with the Warriors for 15 years or whatever it was, 13 years, and they developed and grew in that system, and they became part of the system. And I think that's something that's lacking in college basketball. Is a lot of guys, again, they're chasing money, they're chasing brand names, and they're not realizing, like, you know, hey, probably not a great idea to come here because you're not going to play, or your skill set doesn't translate here. kind of the point I made on
Right,
Donovan
but
Bennett.
I guess what I'm thinking in Ahmad Bradshaw, because I used him as an
for sure.
example. In his case, obviously he has not lived up to expectations, and you understood why he might not want to follow Calipari to Arkansas. Maybe he doesn't want to live in Arkansas. Who knows?
For sure.
So he goes to Ohio State, and he looks basically like the same player, and he looks, the kid has no muscle. I've seen 80-pound girls have bigger wrists than he does. And the thing of it is Ahmad Bradshaw is Ohio State saying, don't come back here? Or is Ahmad Bradshaw saying, oh, it didn't work out for me here. This is a shitty program. I'm going to go to a good program. And I just don't know.
I think that might be both. It also might be that he's just not like, I mean, some of it too might be just not that good. I mean, if you can't make it work at these places,
how could he not be that good when he was like the number one recruit in his class?
I've seen him enough in person to tell you he's just not good.
Well, yeah, because he's a skinny rail. But can you imagine? I mean, as Xavier Booker, same class. I think he was like 13th overall. He too is in the portal, and there's a lot of similarities between Booker and Bradshaw. Booker's a little more athletic. I think he has a little better shot. Bradshaw's a little taller, but both of them need muscle. My point being is, I could see where Ohio State would say, Ahmad, you got to get stronger. You got to play with more physicality. You can't, all your shots, you have to focus on mid-range and in the paint shots. Take a three every once in a while when you're wide open, but we need you to play better, stronger in the paint. And I would think he would say, I don't know, maybe he has unreasonable expectations of the player he can be. Everybody that size wants to be Kevin Durant, and trust me, he's not Kevin Durant, nor will he ever be. But my point is, to me, the smart thing for him to do would be, it's not like Ohio State is Appalachian State. You're going to get everything that's the best at Ohio State. You're going to get the best strength and conditioning, nutritional program, and everything else. And the same could be said of Kentucky, where he left before. And my question is, by changing programs again, he's just retarding his own development. So, and I don't know if it's, Ohio State asked him to go. I mean, or is this kid just,
here's what my advice to him, I could totally see it being a mutual parting of ways. I could see Ohio State just maybe kind of doing again, kind of the reset. The season wasn't great. They didn't make the tournament and whatnot. They were like kind of a middling team, but like, this is a prime example of a kid at this point, and this is where I do hope the pendulum swings and kids start realizing stuff. Like, dude, you need to go to like a mid-major program and go kind of shine there and get your confidence, understand what it's like to have the ball in your hands, really learn how to play basketball, and go be a piece. And I'm not saying he needs to go play at Pacific. That's not what I'm saying. But, dude, go be a force at some of these really solid mid-major.
New Mexico?
Go to a New Mexico, go to a VCU, go to a place that you're still playing good competition, but the ball's going to be in your hand. I mean, hell, dude, go follow in Zed Key's footsteps, go to Dayton and go be a factor and a force there. Like, so many of these guys get caught up in these name brands. It's like I said, it's a rhythmic sport. You're never going to get better at basketball if you're not playing basketball. There's nothing that substitutes game reps. There's nothing that substitutes the feel of having the ball in your hand in a live situation. And guys like this need to go, I think, simulate that. And I think we're kind of at a point, I think Joey kind of might agree here. I don't know if he's that good, to be honest. I don't think he's a Kentucky starting center caliber type of guy. I think that's been kind of proven. He's not a starting Big Ten center, but that doesn't mean he can't be a force. That doesn't mean he can't develop. That doesn't mean he can't be a factor. Like, there's no shame in like stepping down a level, but getting the ball in your hands and feeling it, because you can have all the physical tools, but like at the end of the day, the game's about putting the ball in the bucket. It's about grabbing rebounds. There's nothing to supplement doing that in an actual game setting and playing 14 minutes a night on a middling team and nothing really run through you and you're kind of just out there meandering. Yeah, you're not going to get any better. And so like, this is my advice to him would be, dude, I'd be hitting up these mid-major programs that have a good track record of development, of big men development, like a Dayton, who had good bigs come through there that utilize their bigs, like a Gonzaga. I'm not saying he's going to go to these schools and they're interested in him, but like, those are the places I'd be looking at and be like, that's where I need to prioritize going. A place that's going to develop me, that has a track record, that's going to use me and let me be a force, is going to be able to accept my mistakes and my weaknesses, because Kentucky doesn't have time for you to figure yourself out. You can play or you can't. Ohio State doesn't have time for you to go on a journey of self-discovery on a basketball court. You can play or you can't. And I don't think he's that good, but part of it is I don't think he's gotten a chance to really shine, and we see this with these 5-star guys. I don't know. That's just my advice. I think it's a
I think
mutual
he had his
parting of ways.
chances. I think he had his chances this year. Don't you, Joey?
No, but
I do. But no, Drew, I see your point. I think I agree with you as well. But I think the writing was on the wall with him. Halfway through the year when he was getting benched. I mean, there was some kind of allegation. I forget exactly what happened, but like, he wasn't playing when he
Domestic abuse, I believe.
right. And then he came back. He was off the bench. I mean, Ohio State was so eager to keep him off the court. We were playing Sean Stewart at the 5. There were times where we had Royal and Mahaffey playing the 4 and 5. There were times we didn't have where our tallest player in the court was Micah Parrish. So we were eager to keep him off the court. He's just not that great. I think he could be an okay center on a mid-major team, but I don't think he can ever be a go-to guy. I mean, I think his potential at this point is, he's not even a good rebounder. Like, when I was at the Indiana game, it's just the ball just would slip through his hands. Like, I mean, really the best we've seen him is when he spaces the floor. He's worked on his jump shot. He can hit a few, long mid-ranges, a few threes. Like, if anything, I'd try and turn him into like just a stretch 4 because he just can't play down low.
Well, that's what he wants to be. To be.
Mm-hmm. So maybe, go to a mid-major, like Drew said, somewhere where he has a little bit of freedom, where, if he's like, if AAC schools and Mountain West schools are reaching out, he's like, I want to go somewhere where I can play power forward, let some other big get the rebounds and blocks. Let me stand in the corner and shoot threes.
There's not a lot of 7-1 guys on the planet with his just like physical attributes, so it's like you can go take advantage of that at the Mountain West level, the American level, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like, I just don't think he's a power 5 big.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Well, but, not with that body he has.
Mm-hmm. And Rich, the other thing I realized, because you were talking about like, do they just kind of blame the system and leave? Is when I went to the interviews, when I was covering the Ohio State Washington game, I got to watch like the John Mobley and Aaron Bradshaw interviews, and I kind of look at these college basketball players like larger than life figures. I've been watching basketball my whole life, and I was listening to them, and I'm like, these are just kids. Like, he's like a year older than me. Like, he's just a big kid. Like,
yeah.
He might not be making like the best decisions. He might not always do what's best in his career. He's a college kid. He's probably going to make some stupid decisions.
Right, right, and it all depends on his network too. How sound is his network, and his network might be more eager for him to make money than he is, and might push him in the wrong direction.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think to answer your question, I think it's all of the above. I'm sure he blames Ohio State, and he's like, oh, I'm going to go somewhere else and be a stud because he's got to keep up that confidence. I'm sure Ohio State kind of wanted him out the same way. I think it's the same situation with Michi. I don't exactly know how the conversation went, but I had a good feeling, before the year was over. I'm like, these guys will not be playing basketball at Ohio State next year.
Oh yeah, I knew that with
right.
Michi. That was a foregone conclusion.
Right, and I think it's the case for both of them. I think they knew it. I think everyone here in Columbus knew it. So yeah, I think
the question is, why is Michi getting like a 9th year of college basketball?
I think it was 2 with I think it was 2 with Ohio State, 2 with South Carolina, then 1 with Ohio State, and now another with South Carolina. It's insane.
I think did he get an injury? Was it an injury waiver?
No, he left for personal reasons.
Right. Okay. That's what I thought. I'm like, I know he had that really short season, but didn't he walk away willingly? Like,
basically, Mobley was playing better with him, and he moved to the bench, and then he quit.
And now he's going to take all of Eagle Staff's touches. It's tragic. It's tragic.
Any final thoughts, Josh, before we moved on to our picks of the week, our final four edition?
Just one thing I would like to say is that I think at times we do. I think just as fans, it's just like people who appreciate. Not even, also like coaches, scouts. I think sometimes we have this tendency to expect so much out of some of these 5-star recruits coming out of high school. I'm seeing like at the time, it's like, we're kind of relying our basis off these scouts, off these 247 sports who, oh, this guy's gonna be a 5-star. He's got all the talent in the world. He's got all like the natural being, like this dude will be an NBA talent. And then you look at Aaron Bradshaw, and like he's not, he's hasn't done much. He's like a 4-year college guy. He's like, I don't see him in any way possible that he will be an NBA player. And like to give him some credit, it's partially, obviously he needs to work on himself as a player and just mentally and with everything. But I think it's also, we don't give him enough, credit, and like give him enough slack for him being, a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. It's a lot to like live up to.
Right.
Big
expectations. It's not his fault that they put him as a 5-star.
And like, and that's just like how it is. Like, no, it's really hard to kind of get rid of that narrative and that kind of stereotype in a sense of like, oh, he's a 5-star and he's got to be good right away.
Here's what I'm going to say, though. We can't put it all on the high school scouts.
No, of course not. Against the player.
Because Kentucky went after him, both feet in, and wanted him and brought him in with Wagner and other guys. The funny part of it is Wagner, Bradshaw, Rasheer Fleming of St. Joe's all played on the same teams. Rasheer Fleming sat on the bench, and guess who the pro prospect out of that bunch is?
Yeah.
The guy who was sitting on the bench in high school. So, yeah, you're right. The high school ratings do probably put some undue pressure on them. It's just my immediate gut reaction, and I think I maybe have to step back here. I'm basically kind of doing therapy with you guys, because my immediate reaction is like, really, you think another school is going to make you better? Just stay in one place and develop. And that's my immediate reaction. But then, God knows, then I start thinking, well, I don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. There could be, 100 reasons why he's in the portal. So I guess what I'm saying is maybe sometimes I'm a little too judgmental. But I will say, with these freshmen who didn't play last year, they were, I just don't get it. Why you sat last year because you were a freshman, you had no experience, and you had better people with experience on the team. Now those people with experience are leaving, they're graduating and so forth. Why are you leaving now? This is your time to play, and why did you go someplace where you were likely sit, and now you're going to jump ship? I don't get that. It makes no sense. Unless they have unreasonable expectations on how much playing time they're going to get. And we've seen that at Kentucky. When Calipari used to have 4 5-stars and 3 4-stars, and 3 of them would be riding the pine all year. So Drew and I would say every year, why do these guys go to Kentucky? Why do you go to Kentucky when you're not going to play?
High school recruiting is crazy, man. I think basketball and football are the 2 sports most susceptible to, I don't think people realize sometimes, when you're beating up on kids that are coming out of algebra class and you're 6'9" and a freak. I saw Aaron Gordon play live and was like, holy crap. He was in my school's conference. And sometimes high school recruiting is it's such a crapshoot. Sometimes it's just because they're bigger, more physically imposing, and it's so difficult. Mm-hmm. I think that's the big issue too. A lot of these places have is a lot of these kids are so raw, but they're just so much more physically gifted and imposing. That's why the 5-star rating thing is so brutal. It's I think Josh hit the nail on the head. It's so hard to live up to that, because basketball is a sport that requires skill. It's not track and field where you can if you're just you can naturally just be the fastest guy, and you have to have a level of skill that develops, especially as you start going against grown ass men. And I think that gets kind of lost in the fold for a lot of these young guys. If you're 6'11" in high school, how many 6'11", 18-year-olds are walking around this planet that can run and jump at the same time? Of course, you're good at basketball, but that doesn't mean you're going to be able to go face down,
another 6'11" guy
who's 23 years old,
right,
and has been playing college basketball in the SEC for 5 years. So
right. Yeah, no, I'm completely with you guys. I just completely blanked on what I was going to say. Another guy I want to bring up is Sean Stewart too on Ohio State, another 5-star that you see these guys, they're so athletically gifted. Oh, he's so special. He has the build, he has the athleticism. It doesn't matter. He can't play. Like I haven't seen a player. He has no offensive bag. Like I I I haven't seen a player.
Other than dunking.
Right. Like when he gets the ball in his hands, it's going to be a turnover or a shot that's not even going to hit the rim. And this is going back to what Josh's saying. It's the rankings. Like you never know how they're gonna how players are gonna go from high school to college. Like Drew said, it's an absolute crapshoot. Like, all my friends here at Ohio State, oh my God, Julian Sayan's going to be so good. He's so talented. He's so five-star. I'm not saying a word until I see him play college football against the Big Ten, because you never know. We've seen time and again so many top recruits. They're so athletic. They're so good. They dominate high school. They play against college competition. They're not that good. You just don't know until you see it happen.
Yeah. And you know what? That trend continues into the NBA draft. Cam Reddish, last time I heard, was just cut by the Lakers. People love Cam Reddish. And I was like, all this guy could do is stand in the corner and shoot. I mean, I can find a million 6'7" guys, that could stand in the corner and shoot. What's so special about Cam Reddish? And the only thing I can say, after watching him is, well, maybe in the pros, they'll give him more freedom to play on the ball. By the way, I've been calling Aaron Bradshaw, Ahmad Bradshaw. I meant Aaron Bradshaw. All right, so we got that straightened out. All right, we'll move on to picks of the week. We didn't do so well last week, and Drew solidified his standings in first place just by watching us slide down the standings. All of us lost money, especially Josh and I. We each lost $47. And what killed us was that 3-point shot.
Oh my God.
Unreal.
We had a bad beat. The game is over. Old Miss, who threw that shot up? Matthew Morrell. Who was on the show. On the friend of the show, Matthew Morrell, threw up a meaningless 3-pointer, like what, around half court?
It was the logo. Yeah, logo.
Yeah, and it goes in, and the spread was 3.5 we were giving, and Michigan State won by 3. That ball, literally, I'm like, show the replay. Did it really go through? I mean,
and it was the weirdest bounce. It hit the back of the rim and died and rolled into the hoop. I've never seen that.
I died. Okay. Because that was the killer. That was the killer for us for the week. So, all in all, I think we probably won as many bets as we lost, but it was how we emphasized them. Because like Michigan State, we all liked better than everybody else. And then Houston laid an egg against Purdue as well. So that double crushed us. So we were right on most of the games, but where we emphasized our money is what killed us. So Drew's still in first place. Josh still in second. I'm still in third. Now negative money. I'm minus $12 for the year. And Joey's minus 45. Joey and I are the poster children for why you should not gamble. All right. So now what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the final 4 games, and you get your choice of the spread or the money line. And, that's up to you. But then for the championship pick, we're going to all we can do is go by the money line because there is no spread yet. So so as if we were making the bet today. All right. So Drew, we got Florida versus Auburn. They've already met twice and they split, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we know that Janiah Broome, he's been kind of hobbling for this reason or that reason. He got hurt in the Elite 8 game. It looked like he wasn't coming back and wasn't sure if it was his knee or his elbow. And but I think ultimately it was his elbow, right?
Yeah, it was his elbow. He took a bad fall, and it looked like it went like it. Yeah, it was a bad fall on his elbow.
And then Baker Mazzara is also playing with like a wrap around his hand, but he managed to get through the game. He's been nicked up most of the year too. So as far as I know, Florida's healthy. The spread is 2.5, and the money line obviously Auburn's plus 130, and Florida is minus 155. So Drew, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to take Florida here. Actually, I think I'm going to take them at minus 155 here. So I just looked. They've only met once. They only did meet once.
Oh,
They played
there's
once.
only that one game at
Yeah,
Auburn, and Florida thrashed
won
them.
by 9 or 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to take Florida here. I think, we talked about it coming into this that they were kind of the hottest team in the country, playing really good basketball. I think that has pretty much stood. I mean, they've definitely been tested. I mean, UConn kind of gave them a game. I mean, the score is a little bit lopsided. We are like a little off because they hit that late three. I mean, they hit that really late three. So, I mean, they won by, I think, 5 instead of 2. But they got a game from UConn. They handled business against Maryland. And then, I mean, they probably should have lost to Texas Tech if that game plays out 10 times, they probably lose it 8 of those 10 times. But, it worked out. But I still think that this team did show me something. The big fear with teams like Florida when they're kind of coming into the tournament, just kind of boat racing people, is that they haven't been have they been tested? Can they handle that? And they've been tested in this tournament a couple of times. They've handled it. That Texas Tech game was good to see them. Knowing that Walter Clayton Jr. is the closer that we've expected him to be. I mean, he was phenomenal down the stretch. I mean, that was a Steph Curry NBA level like 3 where he literally dribbled out the 3-point line, turned around and shot a fall away and nothing but net. I mean, like that's stuff that that's just that's special in that moment to have to honestly have the balls to take that shot is big time. So, I think Auburn looked really, really good. The Janai Broom stuff does kind of worry me. I think he's fine. He practiced in full, he'll play, but you never know if a guy's not 100% in these types of moments. That 80% of Janai Broom, 95% of Janai Broom might not be enough against a really good team in this kind of stage. So I think it's a really good game. Going back and forth, I want to take the spread or you guys are all taking the. No, I'll stick with the 155. But I'm gonna take Florida here. I picked them to get to the championship game, and I'm gonna stick with them.
All right, Joey, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm rocking with Florida here. Part of it is just out of spite because I kept saying Auburn was going to fall flat on their face in big moments, and they haven't. And I resent them for that. Florida, I mean, March Madness is all about getting hot at the right time, and I think Florida's the hottest team in the nation. I mean, Auburn, Duke, Houston, they've been great all year, but I mean, Florida just kind of came out of nowhere and they've just been a fireball ever since. Walter Clayton, I mean, I don't even know what to say. He's ridiculous. I mean, I think he's the biggest big time shot maker in the tournament. Like if it's a close game down the stretch, I can't think of a player in this tournament I'd rather have than him. I mean, the shots he's able to hit, they're contested. Put anyone on him, he's hitting the shots. I like the matchup of Condon on Broom. I mean, I think if anyone is going to stop Broom besides from the Houston guys, I like Condon. I think he could come up big. He's been phenomenal all tournament. Having Richard and Martin there, even if Clayton's having an off game, and then Broom's injury does worry me a little bit. I don't know. I think that I think the game is going to be close, and I think in a close game, I want Walter Clayton. I think it's going to be a close game down the stretch. It's going to be who's going to get their team a bucket. Is it going to be Clayton or is it going to be Broom? And I trust Clayton more. I think Broom's going to have a hard time in the paint. Florida's got some great bigs. In Auburn, I don't really trust their guards that much to make big shots if Broom's getting locked up. I mean, Jones and Kelly, they hit their threes, but and Pettiford's been phenomenal, but I don't trust them. I don't trust Jones and Kelly to create their own shot, and I'm still taking Clayton over Pettiford, so I'm rocking with Florida here, minus 2.5.
Josh?
Yeah, I'm going with Florida here. Spread 2.5. I just think that this Florida team has been just firing on all cylinders as of late. Texas Tech had that game pretty late in, 10-point lead, but even so, they still were hard fought win. Walter Clayton, all year we've been saying he's the guy, and he's been showing it off in March. I think Florida's going to have a plan for Janai Broom. I think, with Condon and my guy, I'm a big Thomas Hall fan. I think he's going to, create some defensive, issues for Janai Broom. And I think the guards are going to have to, for Auburn, are going to have to step up a bit. Miles Kelly, it's been kind of, a little rough here and there. Tahad's been their best guard on this team so far. I think Chad Baker-Mazaro he's been pretty inefficient as of late. But then again, they got some, Dylan Cardwell has been playing really well as of late, but I think just the depth of this Florida team is just it's a lot. They have good players, efficient players on that bench, and like that's a key for me for this team. And I think also just that you got a closer in Walter Clayton who can make just shot after shot, big shots. Like he's built for this moment. So I'm rolling with the Gators here on the spread.
Yeah, I like Florida minus the 2.5 as well. I'm going to put 30 on it. And basically, like Joey, I have felt somewhere along the line Auburn was going to self-destruct. And I still don't think that team is very disciplined. Not so much in the way they play, but the way they act, the way they make decisions. But they can be tremendous, especially defensively. But we've seen games such as when they lost to Florida at home where the defense just falls apart. I also, with Broom, he was definitely banged up last game. No ifs, ands, or buts, and he's been dealing with shoulder, elbow, knee. Everything. We've said it at the start of the tournament. Florida could throw 4 bigs at you, and they got 5 good guards. Their starting guards might be the best starting guards in the country, and their bigs are pretty damn good too, and they're young, so they even have more room to grow. So I definitely think between Broom's injury and Auburn's potential to self-destruct, I like Florida minus the points here. So now we move on to Duke and Houston. And the spread here is 4.5. The money line is a little more spread out. So if you want Houston, you get plus 205. If you want Duke, you got to put up minus 260 or 26 to win 10. So, Drew, you have Houston in the finals. I know you have Houston winning it all. Who you going though in this contest? Because you don't have to stick with your picks if you don't want
to. Man, I'm sticking to my guns, Rich. You know that I'm not changing. I'm not faltering here. I'm taking Houston. I think whoever comes out of this game is going to win the national championship. In my opinion, the winner of this one's going to win the whole thing. So if Duke does pull it off, I think Duke will beat Florida or Auburn, and I have Houston winning it. So I love this Houston team. Anyone who's been following the show knows I've spoken so highly of this program for years, and they finally kind of have the offense to kind of back it up. Everything about this team's resume just screams like it's our time. You have the trio of guards that have quite literally each one has had a game. And like since that Gonzaga game, each one of them has had a moment. Cryer was awesome against Gonzaga, goes for damn near 30. Then Uzan lights up Purdue. And then you have Sharp, lights up Purdue. Yeah, Sharp hit like 4 big threes against. Those guys have stepped up each time. And if they get all 3 of them get going at one point, good luck. We know what Tugler and Roberts are going to do. They're going to play hard. They're going to defend their asses off. And while I love Cooper Flagg, I love the size of Duke, Houston's not going to be intimidated. Houston's going to take the punches, throw them right back. They have the veteran play to handle it. I think Kelvin Sampson is the best coach remaining of the 4. So I think he's going to have his guys locked in and prepared. There's a bit of a revenge game vibe to it, with this Houston team losing to Duke last year when Jamal Shed went down. And you just look at their resume. I've said it all year. The thing that I love about this team is there's an unkillable, no flinchness to them. Like this team is never out of the fight. They've never backed down. You go on an 8-0 run, they're going to not let you get to 10. If one guy's struggling, someone else is stepping up and hitting that big 3. Gonzaga could never close the gap because every time someone went down and scored, Crowder came down and hit a 3. Purdue was going back and forth with them. Uzan just would come down, big shots, get to the rim. Their defense suffocated Tennessee. Now, we always joke about Rick Barnes on the show, but absolutely suffocated them. They just find ways. What's the bad loss on their resume? An overtime loss by 5 to Alabama, an overtime loss by 3 to San Diego State, or the last 10 they lost, which is an overtime loss by 1 against Texas Tech. there isn't one. Like this team's battle tested. They're veterans. I think Duke's going to come out and throw punches, but they're still banking on young guys, and I don't know. This Houston team just has the kind of makeup that I want. It's hard to the basketball stuff's gonna take care of itself. I just think mentally this team is ready and locked in, and it's about time. I think this team finally gets to hoist one after being a 1 seed for what, like 3 of the last 4 years, and last year really being right there, and then Jamal Shed going down. So I'm gonna roll with the Cougars, man. I think they're made of all the right stuff.
Joey, I think you're thinking differently.
I am, but I want to start off by giving Houston their flowers. I love this Houston team. I'm with Drew. I do think the winner of this game wins it all. I would have Houston beating Florida and Auburn pretty comfortably, I'd say. I mean, I've said it since the start of the year. Like, they make watching defense fun to watch, and I've never really noticed that with any other team before. It's just Kelvin Sampson's ability to churn out like just the same philosophy, the same kinds of players over and over again. It's really great. I mean, I love watching them year in, year out. I mean, and they've had like so many different kinds of players. Like, they had I loved watching Shed last year, and now Uzan's been great. And I think Arsenault is going to be the next one up. I think he's going to be phenomenal in the near future. But I do have to go with Duke here. People who don't know as much college basketball always, they always ask, like, do you think a college team could ever beat a pro team? And I always say no, because it's so different, college and pros. But this Duke team, I mean, it's like an NBA team. I've never seen anything like it. I think we're going to look back at this roster and we're going to see like 6, 7, 8 first-round picks. I mean, Cooper Flagg is one of the best prospects in the 21st century. Knuppel is amazing. Maluak has grown on me more and more with each game. And then, and like those are your guys. Those 3 alone, you can make an argument they could win it. And then even if, we can look even further, like Proctor could easily get hot from 3 and hit a bunch. Isaiah Evans could do so. Caleb Foster's been phenomenal. Zion James even can get you 15 points. Like, they just have so much, and it's not like, oh, this guy's the point guard, this guy's the shooter. Like, everyone does everything. They're so connected. It's such great team basketball. I mean, they all defend well, they all shoot well, they all pass well, they play together. Like, I really can't even come up with a comparison for this team, because it's really not like any college basketball team I've ever seen before. I do love Houston, but what scares me a little bit about them is, I mean, the teams, they've beaten good teams, but not teams I would classify as like offensive powerhouses. Like, Tennessee's a great team, but they're, I would say, more defensive than offensive. I'd say the same for Purdue, who gave them quite a scare.
I wouldn't, but
No?
no, I think Purdue's a much more offensive team, but
I think Purdue's still solid defensively, and I mean, points wise, I feel like they're not touching what Duke is doing, and even they gave Houston. I mean, Houston had to resort to a last second layup to get that win. The Houston game was, the Gonzaga game was a little close. Duke, I feel like, has handled business a little more comfortably. I mean, beating Bama by 20, beating Baylor by over 20, like, those are solid teams that they beat. And I thought that Baylor had their struggles, but like early on, like, I thought they were playing well. Duke just overpowered them. I mean, I don't even have the words. I can't think of another team that I've seen this powerful. Houston's a great team, but I think Duke is going to take this one. I'm taking minus 4.5.
Josh?
So yeah, I'm in a little bit of a pickle here, because I took Houston to beat Duke in the bracket. But as of late, I think this Duke team has been just, they look like the best team in the country, and they have been playing like it. But I can't do my bracket wrong, so I gotta go Houston plus 4.5. I love everything about this team. I think I honestly, Drew, Joey, they put the nail on it, man. I think that defense comes first with Coach Sampson. That's what they've been preaching all year. It's been preaching his whole coaching career as well. I don't think this Duke team has seen a defense like this before. They've had some great wins offensively. They've looked the part for sure. I'm a little worried about Houston's offense. At times it could look a little stagnant. And, at times, there's droughts for this team. But I think if Houston keeps keeps the game, like the score low, 60s, 70s max, maybe, I think they have a decent chance of even just winning this game. I do think this is going to be a close game. Like 4.5, I could see, maybe win, 2, 3 points. But I gotta stay with my bracket. I'm hoping Houston comes out with the win. I think that'd be awesome. So we're gonna go with the Cougars on the spread plus 4.5.
All right. Duke is starting to remind me of UConn in the way they're mowing people down. And I go back to that Purdue game. Joey's right. Houston was lucky to win that, and that we haven't been big supporters of Purdue this year. Purdue has their limitations. And when Texas Tech beat Houston at home, they did it without JT Toppin and one of the guards, I think, were out. That's the game JT Toppin got kicked out of because I don't know, he went up in the air and his legs kind of spread out a little bit, and he caught somebody by accident in the groin, and they tossed him out, which everybody was, irate about. It's like
it was a horrible call. That should never have happened.
Yeah.
Horrible call.
And Texas Tech still went on to win that game. It may have been only Toppin, but I think that somebody else might have been out for that game as well. So I just don't see where Houston, is in the class of Duke. We all say that, they haven't been tested. And I get that. But Houston's good. To me, Duke is great. So I wish I wasn't given 4.5, but I'm going to put 20 on this one. By the way, Drew is putting 20 on Houston plus the points. Joey's also putting 20 on Duke minus the points. And going back to the original bet, I put 30 on Florida. Joey put 20. Notice the guys who are in the red. The guys who are in the red are just throwing good money after bad here.
Rich, we got to get out of the hole.
And so the other thing I wanted to say is, one thing I noticed, when I was at the Eastern Regional is Patrick Gamba, he is really coming along as a backup center. And if Malawach, I assume Malawach is going pro, but if he doesn't, it's going to create a problem because that kid's really good in his own right. And the thing that impresses me the most about him is his passing. I think that's one area where he has Malawach, is his vision and passing. But I was totally impressed by Duke, in the Eastern Regional. They just destroyed Alabama. And I don't even think that score was indicative of how they really, how much they dominated Alabama. So, all right. So now we're going to make our champion picks. Now, of course, we all kind of did that with our bracket, but we're welcome to change here, and we're going to do it with the money line that currently stands. I'm going to start off with Josh because we never let Josh go first. So, Josh, go ahead.
I appreciate that. So I'm currently the only one who has had all the co-hosts, picked all my final 4 picks correctly. I had Houston in the national champions as well as Florida. If people listen on the show, my champion I put was Florida, beating Houston. And that doesn't change today. I've got Florida plus 300. I'm putting $25 on it. I think this team has it all to win this national championship. I think this will be a classic game. I think it'll be an awesome game between Florida and Houston. You got Walter Clayton, just an unreal player. I love a good team that has just all around talent, just all, everyone knows, the role and what they have to do in order to win. I just think they got a bunch of gritty guys, Elijah Martin, Thomas Haw, Alex Condon. Even Will Richard is shooting the ball as of late really well. They're getting good production out of him, three or four threes a game. Like that's hard for teams to kind of go up against, and you still got Walter Clayton putting up 25 a game. So I'm going with Florida. So let's go Gators. Chomp chomp.
Drew?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Houston. I made the claim that the winner of that side of the bracket's gonna win the whole thing, and I'm gonna stick with that. I'm gonna rock with the Cougars. I think they match up well with both teams that could come out that they could face. I think Duke is the test for them. I think Auburn. I totally agree, Rich. I think the game that's going to be played there is going to be the mental one between those two teams, and Houston is way more locked in there. I have way more faith in Houston going on, executing their game plan, not getting rattled, handling the pressure than I would against Auburn, especially if Broom's not 100%. This could be the Chaz Baker Mazzara punches somebody in the face 10 seconds of the game, gets thrown out, and it all goes downhill. I think Florida would be a really good game, but again, I think it boils down to me just Houston has been there. Give me Sampson over Golden and the coaching element. And I think Houston can play the type of game that Florida wants to, where the guards do a lot of the scoring is a lot on the guards and the bigs are kind of doing everything for you. I'm like, is there a better duo at kind of that utility bigs than Tugler and Roberts? I mean, in terms of just kind of doing all the things that you want in terms of rebounding, defending, give you a little bit of scoring. Like they check all those boxes. Yeah, so I just think that matchup would be really fun. But sign me up for an LJ Cryer versus Walter Clayton Jr. like kind of masterclass one against another. But again, I just think Houston, when you get to this level, all the teams are good. I mean, look at any metric, just overall records, quality of wins, Ken Palm, all that stuff. These are the top four teams in the country, like I said earlier. And what's going to separate the quote unquote men from the boys here, I think, is just who wants it more. Like games like this against this caliber opponent comes down to the guy who dives on the floor. It's cliched, I know. This is stuff that my freshman high school basketball coach told me, but like this game could very easily come down to the guy who is willing to jump into the scorer's table head first. This is the guy who rotates a guy who's gonna come off the bench and just give you a spark out of nowhere in some capacity. And I think that's what Houston's built for. So I don't trust Auburn mentally in that moment, and I think Houston would be an awesome game, but I think Houston's just a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, better coach at the helm. So I'll take the Cougars.
Joey, before you pick up, I just want to note off a couple things. One is the odds that we're giving here. Duke is even money. Florida is plus 300. Houston is plus 440. Auburn plus 540. So so far we have Josh taking Florida for 25, Drew taking Houston for 25, and now Joey.
Yeah, I have Duke. My bracket may have fell flat on its face towards the end, but I did have Duke winning it all. So, like Josh said, you got to ride with your bracket. I don't have too much to add because I mostly covered it when I was advocating for them against Houston because I did think the winner of that game was going to win it all, and I do have Duke winning that game. They're just star-studded from head to toe. And it's funny, Rich, you brought up you compared them to the UConn team. And it's funny you mentioned that because it made me realize after, once Flag and Knipple and Malawak go to the draft, they're still going to have Evans, Foster, Nagamba, and then they're going to get the Boozer Bros. So they really could be like UConn in the sense of, going back to back with like completely different rosters, which you don't see too much, although I guess maybe we're starting to see that now. But Cooper Flag is the best player in college basketball. Him, Knipple, and Malawak are all they're all going to go top 10 in the draft. I really, there's not much more to say. They're elite. Like I think they're all going to be NBA stars. Knipple has he's been playing point a little more, kind of doing like pick and rolls with Malawak, which has been unstoppable. I think it was the Bama game. They were like 3 in a row or something like that. Like they just kept running pick and roll. Knipple would take the little floater layup or he'd lob it up to Malawak. Flag's been hitting threes at a crazy rate. He's been unstoppable in the post. Tyrese Proctor any given game can light you up 7 threes. Isaiah Evans hasn't been playing that much just because the roster is so loaded, but once he does, he's automatic from 3 as well. There was just so much talent on this team, so much depth. If anyone's having a bad game, there are 3, 4, 5 other players that can come and pick it up. Even when they go to the bench, like they still, Nagamba's still great defensively. Foster's solid. Like, I don't think there's another team with this depth. I don't think there's another team with the star power. I think not only do I think Duke's going to win the championship, this might be a little bit of a hot take. I think they're going to do so comfortably. I think it's going to be like UConn, where they roll through the last two games. I don't know about 20 plus like some of the UConn games were, but I really don't think either of these games will be close. That's how much I believe in this Blue Devil team.
All right. I too like Duke. Now I picked Florida on my card, but at the time I wasn't sure how healthy Cooper Flagg was going to be, and I said if I knew Cooper Flagg was 100% healthy, I would have picked Duke to win it all. And I actually placed a wager, about a real wager, a couple weeks before the tournament started, on Duke, because the more I watched them, the more I liked them. And I think Florida is going to be their stiffest competition. Auburn, I kind of eliminate because I'm not sure about Janiah Broom's health. Now, we saw how that worked out with Cooper Flagg, but I literally saw Broom, really looking limited when I last saw him play. I think Houston is also a challenge. And I hear what you guys are saying about the system, about the grit and the experience. Yeah, I think they will give Duke a battle. I think Florida will give them a battle. In the Alabama game, it was shocking to me, actually, because Duke really had that game in control from start to finish. But, Alabama was always kind of in striking range. I mean, they would have had to go on a pretty good run. I think the score kind of vacillated between like maybe 8 and 12 points, maybe 8 and 14 points. But here's the thing that concerned me in that game was Shire barely used his bench. He barely used his bench. 5 guys played big minutes in that game. So can they do that on a Saturday and then turn around and do that on a Monday? That's a little scary. But I just think that Cooper Flagg has just been, and this team has just really kind of, gone on these roles. And I think when you want to pick a champion, at the start of the tournament, when you're picking your bracket, you basically want to look at the teams that really have not come close to losing or very close. Like St. John's had the total points of the games that they had lost added up to 7 before they lost in the round of 32. Drew threw out a stat about Houston, how Houston has barely lost. Those are the types of teams you want. The ones that can win 6 games in a row. Now we're only talking about winning 2 games in a row. And the other thing I want to point out is, do you realize in Ken Palm and Sports Reference power rankings, which are somewhat similar, both of these teams were the top 4 teams before the tournament started. So if you basically picked your bracket by Ken Palm, you're probably winning your bracket right now. So yeah, but I'm going with Duke because this kind of reminds me of what I've seen from Connecticut in the last 2 years. But I don't think Duke has quite the depth, or at least it doesn't utilize the depth as much as the other teams. And I find that a little scary. But yeah, it was kind of what I've been thinking since this month of March began, and now we're in April. But yeah, I've been thinking Duke, and I'm going to stay with it at even money. All right, folks. That wraps up the show. As always, I want to thank all our listeners, and hopefully we'll have a special guest next week. I've really been busy going to the Big East Regional and dealing with all that good stuff. By the way, I met Albert King, Bernard King's brother, the great Bernard King, and Albert King played in the NBA for quite some time as well. Which it's interesting who you meet at these events. Also met Jordan Cornette, former Notre Dame player, now does NBC broadcasting. But anyway, we will be back next week to wrap up the college season. We'll see how Joey, we got to get out of the red here. We have no games left. This is it. and we'll wrap up the college season, and we'll have our 2025 awards. Yes, we hand them out once the season is basically over, because that makes sense, because they're awards for the season. So why would you give them out before the season's over? Next week the season's over, and we'll give out our awards. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
There's a good chance I missed some of these games, and
No, not more
Yeah.
baseball.
Oh yeah, for baseball. So yeah, not good. So here's praying that I can get those games. There's no run rule in D2 college baseball, which is just absolutely God's sick joke on the universe, because college baseball is not great. D2 college baseball is pretty bad. So here's hoping those games wrap up quick so I can get home, because if I don't catch these games against these teams, I'm gonna be pissed.
Here's how unathletic baseball is. It was probably my best sport as growing up. So, of course, I wasn't 500 pounds overweight back then. But anyway, by the way, we will start talking about the NBA in 2 weeks. NBA playoffs
How about the Warriors?
Start the 15th.
Let's go Knicks.
Go Nuggets.
Let's go Joel Embiid.
That guy still plays basketball? Did he?
I heard at the Eastern Regional, someone said that there is talk that his career is over.
Get ready to put the fries in the bag, dude.
That he's done. That he's done medically.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And even if he's not, I can't think of any GM that would want him at this point.
Agreed. I've been saying he's been the problem for probably almost as long as we've been doing this show. So we're in season 4. Everyone looks at those gaudy numbers and is like, oh, he's so great, MVP candidate. Yeah. And what do we call those kinds of stats, Drew?
When empty calories.
Yes, exactly. Empty calories.
Empty calories.
Yep. All right. We'll end on that negative note. Enjoy the Final Four, everyone. We'll see you next week.